I woke to the sound of something breathing beside me, slow, mechanical, patient. For a few seconds, I believed I was underwater. My body felt suspended, heavy, disconnected from command. There was no pain yet, only pressure, a deep, steady pressure, like the ocean holding you still. Then awareness arrived in fragments, a ceiling, white and too bright, the antiseptic smell of hospital air, a tube in my throat. I tried to swallow and failed. A nurse leaned into my vision. Her voice was calm, trained, almost rehearsed. "Megan, if you can hear me, blink." I blinked. "That's good. You've been asleep for 2 weeks." 2 weeks. The words moved slowly through me, like thick liquid finding its level. "Medically induced coma," she explained later. "Complications after the accident, internal bleeding, respiratory instability. Your body needed time." Time. That was the word they always used when something almost ended you. When they removed the ventilator, my throat burned raw. My muscles trembled when I tried to lift my own hand. I studied the back of it as if it belonged to someone else. 2 weeks gone. And yet the world had continued. The first thing I asked for was water. The second was my phone. The third was my father. Thomas Reed arrived the following morning. He did not rush into the room. He stood just inside the doorway first, scanning equipment, monitors, IV lines, as if assessing liability. He wore a navy blazer, pressed, structured, unmoved. He had always dressed like stability. "You look thin," he said. "I was in a coma." He nodded once, acknowledging the fact without attaching emotion to it. He did not hug me. He did not sit immediately. He adjusted his cuff, glanced at the monitor, then at the folder tucked beneath his arm. "We need to discuss something practical." Of course we did. The heart monitor continued its steady green rhythm. I watched it instead of him. "The hospital contacted me about the outstanding balance," he said. "They assumed family responsibility." I waited. I declined. The word did not echo. It simply settled. "You're 32, Megan," he continued, voice calm. "It's time you finally stand on your own." There was no anger in his tone. That would have been easier to respond to. This was measured, controlled, justified. "I've supported you long enough." Supported. I tried to remember when that support had last existed without conditions attached to it. After my mother died, he had said something similar. "We all have to grow up faster now." I was 15. Cancer had not given us time to prepare. It had stripped her away in less than a year. I remember the hospital corridor that winter, the way he walked ahead of me, the way I had to jog slightly to keep up. Laura entered our lives 11 months later, not abruptly, gradually, strategically. She arrived with casseroles and understanding eyes. She touched my arm when she spoke. She called me sweetheart before I had agreed to it. And then Kyle came with her, younger, softer, needing protection. My father responded to that need like gravity. The house rearranged itself around them. My mother's desk disappeared first, then the filing cabinet, then photographs. "I'm decluttering," Laura had said lightly. Over time, the story of my mother became smaller, less detailed, less necessary. "You know how hard it was for your father," Laura would say, "losing her." The sentence always landed as if her death had primarily injured him. I learned early not to correct it. Back in the hospital room, my father cleared his throat. "Laura agrees this is healthy," he said. "You've relied on us too long." Relied. I had paid my own tuition, covered my own living expenses, managed my own insurance, but I had used his address for some paperwork years ago, before I moved states. That, apparently, was reliance. "I understand," I said. He looked relieved. That was the first real humiliation, not the refusal, the relief. He stayed 12 minutes. I counted the seconds between his glances at the clock. Before leaving, he placed the folder on the side table. "There are forms you'll need to handle. Insurance disputes, payment arrangements. I'm sure you can manage." Manage. He'd always liked that word when it applied to me. When Kyle struggled in school, tutors were hired. When I struggled, I was told I was strong enough to manage. After he left, the room felt larger. The nurse returned with billing documents, itemized charges, emergency procedures, surgical interventions, lines of numbers that did not flinch. I asked for copies of everything, every notice, every contact record. She hesitated only briefly before printing them. 3 separate notifications regarding a dormant investment account under my mother's maiden name had been sent to my father's address over the past year. Dormant. I had never heard of it. When I asked why the contact information reflected his address instead of mine, the administrator frowned. "That's what we have on file for emergency financial correspondence," she said. "It was updated approximately 9 years ago." 9 years. That was when Laura had insisted on organizing family documents. I lay back slowly, careful of the stitches pulling beneath my ribs. I did not call him. I did not accuse anyone. Pressure clarifies structure. The body heals in layers. So does awareness. As I regained strength over the next week, more details surfaced. A nurse mentioned that my father had declined to authorize access to certain supplemental insurance benefits when contacted during the first days of my coma. "He said you preferred to handle your own affairs," she explained gently. Preferred. While unconscious. I asked for documentation of that conversation. I asked for the name of the representative. I wrote everything down. In the quiet hours of the night, I replayed patterns instead of arguments. The way official mail often arrived already opened when I visited home. The way Laura would say, "Oh, that old thing," before discarding something connected to my mother. The way my father avoided discussing long-term financial planning whenever I brought it up. I remembered asking once, years ago, if my mother had left anything specific in her will. "There wasn't much," he'd said quickly. "Medical bills consumed most of it." I had accepted that answer because grief makes you obedient. Now, lying in a hospital bed he refused to pay for, obedience felt misplaced. The investment account notices were not random. They referenced property rights tied to mineral leases in Colorado. Colorado, the same state where my mother's family had owned land generations ago. I closed my eyes and breathed carefully through the tightness in my chest. My father believed this moment weakened me. He believed medical debt would discipline me into compliance. He believed I would scramble, panic, beg. He had always mistaken my silence for dependence. He did not understand that silence is often preparation. I requested contact information for the institution managing the dormant account. I asked for verification procedures. I asked for historical statements. The administrator studied me with something like curiosity. "You're recovering from major trauma," she said carefully. "I know," I replied. "That's why I'm doing this now." Control returns in increments, a lifted hand, a signed request, a documented inconsistency. When my father visited again 2 days later, I looked stronger. He noticed. "That's good," he said. "You'll be discharged soon." "I've started reviewing the billing notices," I said evenly. He nodded, cautious. "There are some inconsistencies regarding prior correspondence," I continued. He paused just long enough to be measurable. "I'm sure it's clerical," he replied. "Probably." I watched him instead of the monitor this time. He did not ask which inconsistencies. He did not ask how many. He only said, "Don't overcomplicate this, Megan." Overcomplicate. I have never complicated anything. I observe. I document. I wait. I was discharged on a Thursday morning. The hospital hallway felt longer than I remembered. My steps were steady but deliberate. Muscles relearning obedience. Breath measured. Every movement accounted for. No one came to pick me up. I ordered a car. The driver asked if I needed help with my bag. I said no. I did not like being lifted. When I reached my apartment, the air inside felt undisturbed, almost indifferent. Dust had settled along the windowsill. A glass remained on the counter where I had left it 2 weeks earlier. Time had passed without asking permission. I set my discharge papers down and opened my laptop before I removed my coat. The institution managing the dormant account was called Halstead Private Trust. The name meant nothing to me. The verification process required documentation: birth certificate, mother's death certificate, proof of identity, and something called an originating trust reference. Originating. I found my mother's documents in a metal lockbox beneath my bed. I had taken them with me years ago when Laura began reorganizing the house. Her maiden name looked unfamiliar next to mine: Evelyn Carter. I whispered it once, not for sentiment, for accuracy. Halstead's representative returned my inquiry call the next afternoon. Her voice was formal, controlled. "We have record of an investment trust established under the Carter name approximately 23 years ago," she said. "It was structured with conditional release upon confirmation of beneficiary identity." Beneficiary? There is one listed. Who? You. The word did not surprise me. It settled into place like something long misplaced. "The trust has remained inactive due to lack of claimant verification," she continued. "Correspondence was issued annually to the contact address on file." My father's address. Yes. "And no response was ever recorded?" "No formal claim was submitted." I let the silence extend. "There is also property involvement," she added carefully. "Mineral rights and surface land tied to 2 parcels in Colorado. Those parcels were used as leverage collateral in a separate contractual agreement approximately 4 years ago." Leverage? By whom? She paused. "By Thomas Reed Enterprises." My pulse did not change. Years of discipline made sure of that. "Is Thomas Reed Enterprises a beneficiary of the trust?" I asked. "No." "Does the trust authorize use of its assets as collateral without beneficiary consent?" "No." There it was. Not emotional, not dramatic, illegal. I thanked her. I requested digital copies of every historical statement and every notice sent. When the email arrived, I read it twice before allowing my body to react. 10 years. For 10 years, notices had been mailed to my father's home regarding investment growth, land valuation, and dividend accumulation. The numbers were not modest. My mother had not left nothing. She had left everything, and it had been hidden. I drove to my father's house that evening without calling first. Laura answered the door. She looked exactly the same. Controlled smile, hands folded at her waist, composed. "Megan," she said gently, "you should have told us you were coming." I stepped inside without waiting to be invited. The house smelled of lemon polish. "Is he here?" "In the office." She followed 2 steps behind me down the hallway. My mother's old study had become my father's private workspace. The walls were painted darker now, the desk replaced, the filing cabinet gone. He looked up as I entered. Surprise registered first, then calculation. "You shouldn't be driving yet," he said. "I received confirmation from Halstead Private Trust today." The name changed his posture. Laura stopped just inside the doorway. "I've confirmed that the Carter Trust lists me as sole beneficiary," I continued, "and that assets from that trust were used as collateral for a defense contract 4 years ago." He did not interrupt. "They were not authorized by me." Laura's voice arrived before his did. "That land was inactive. It wasn't being used. It was not yours." Silence expanded in the room. "It was family," my father said finally. "We were protecting it." "You were leveraging it." He leaned back slowly in his chair. "You don't understand how contracts work at that level." "I understand authorization." Laura stepped forward slightly. "Your father built that company from nothing," she said softly. "Sometimes paperwork is more flexible than people realize." Paperwork. Flexible. I studied her hands. Perfect nails, no tremor. "Halstead has record of every notice sent," I said. all addressed here, all unopened in their system. My father's jaw tightened. You were in no position to manage an inheritance at 22, he said. You were unstable, grieving, directionless. Unstable. That word had been prepared. Were you planning to inform me? I asked. We intended to consolidate assets properly once you were more mature, Laura replied. Through guardianship? I asked quietly. That stopped her. I watched the recognition flicker, so they had discussed it before. You were in a coma, my father said. It was prudent to consider options. Temporary guardianship? He did not answer directly. You've always needed structure, he said instead. Structure. The same word he used when he approved my enlistment. I stepped closer to the desk. Halstead also informed me that the trust contains mineral rights tied to federal land leases, I said. Those leases were evaluated during the same year you secured the Hudson Defense contract. The name hung there. General Mark Hudson, my father's largest professional alliance. Laura's face shifted first this time. You don't know what you're implying, she said. I don't imply, I replied. I verify. My father stood. For 10 years, that account grew under my legal name, I said, while you used its valuation to strengthen your bid position. That contract employed hundreds of people, he said sharply, including Kyle. There it was, Kyle. It was necessary, Laura added quietly. For whom? Neither answered. I placed a printed statement from Halstead on the desk between us. The current valuation number sat there in black ink. I watched his eyes reach it. You were going to let the hospital collect from me, I said evenly, while you secured federal contracts against assets that weren't yours. You would have been compensated eventually, he snapped. Eventually. I straightened. Halstead has been notified of unauthorized leverage, I said. They're conducting internal review. Laura's composure cracked slightly. You wouldn't, she said. I already did. The room felt smaller now. My father looked at me differently for the first time in years, not as dependent, not as emotional, as risk. You're overreacting, he said. No, I replied. I'm correcting. I turned toward the door. Megan, he said sharply. I paused. You're jeopardizing something much larger than yourself. I know, I said calmly. You taught me that leverage works both ways. I left before either of them could adjust their language. In the car, I did not shake. I did not cry. I called an attorney instead. Defense contracts involve federal compliance audits. Collateral misuse triggers review. Review triggers exposure. The system does not shout. It documents. The attorney's office overlooked a quiet street lined with bare trees. I chose it deliberately. No billboards, no slogans about winning, no smiling faces promising revenge. Glass, steel, silence. His name was Daniel Kessler, mid-50s, precise handshake, no wasted movement. He did not offer sympathy. He offered structure. I placed the Halstead documents on the table between us. He read without interruption. Occasionally, he made a note. Once he adjusted his glasses. That was all. When he finished, he folded his hands. Your father used trust-tied assets as collateral for a federal defense contract without beneficiary authorization, he said calmly. If documentation confirms this, the exposure is significant. Civil? I asked. And potentially federal. I nodded once. This is not about family, he added. This is compliance. That distinction mattered. I don't want confrontation, I said. You don't need it, he replied. He outlined the process without embellishment. First, formal notification from beneficiary to trust administrator regarding unauthorized collateralization. Second, trust freeze request pending review. Third, independent audit submission to contracting authority. And the general? I asked. Kessler looked up. General Mark Hudson's name appears in the contract summary, I said. He endorsed the award publicly. Kessler leaned back slightly. If the collateral was improperly secured, the contract's integrity is compromised, he said. That affects everyone attached to it. He paused. Do you understand what this will trigger? Yes. I did. Audits do not shout. They expand quietly. They examine patterns, signatures, authorizations, dates. They look for leverage that was never owned. We filed the beneficiary declaration that afternoon. The freeze request was transmitted electronically. By the time I stepped back onto the street, the air felt different. Not lighter. Aligned. 3 days later, Halstead confirmed temporary restriction of all trust-linked asset movement pending investigation. 2 days after that, Thomas Reed Enterprises received formal inquiry from the Department of Defense Compliance Division. I did not call my father. He called me. His voice was tight. What have you done? I verified ownership. You've triggered a federal review. Yes. You could have spoken to me. I did. There was silence. You're going to destroy everything, he said. No, I replied. Documentation will. He ended the call without another word. The news did not reach public outlets immediately. Federal reviews rarely do. But within private circles, information moves faster than headlines. On the same week that the compliance inquiry reached my father's office, something else unfolded 2 states away. Colorado, Fort Ridge military installation. An elite Delta strike unit assembled for what had been marketed as a strategic demonstration exercise. Observers, defense contractors, media representatives with limited clearance. The exercise was meant to reinforce General Hudson's legacy doctrine: strength through force projection, rapid dominance, saturation engagement. The simulation would validate decades of operational philosophy, except it didn't. The command center analyst overseeing the digital battlefield was Elena Voss, 36, civilian contractor, systems architect. She had spent 4 years developing an adaptive combat simulation algorithm under restricted testing parameters. It had not yet been deployed at scale. The exercise was her first real application. Within 10 minutes of simulated engagement, the Delta Strike Team was digitally neutralized, not through overwhelming firepower, through predictive modeling. Her algorithm identified communication latency patterns, supply chain dependencies, environmental miscalculations. It exploited doctrine rigidity. In the command center, silence followed the red markers spreading across the digital terrain. General Hudson reportedly leaned forward in his seat. "Reset," he said. They ran it again. Same result, faster. The algorithm adjusted in real time. By the 3rd iteration, the entire strike team was eliminated within 8 minutes. Observers stopped taking notes. The exercise had been designed to showcase dominance. Instead, it exposed vulnerability. Elena did not celebrate. She requested data logs. She isolated decision tree weaknesses. She documented doctrinal stagnation. The official summary described the outcome as unexpected simulation variance. Unofficially, it was described as collapse. General Hudson's strategic model, used for years in contract justifications, was suddenly obsolete, and Thomas Reed Enterprises had built its collateralized bid around that doctrine. The Compliance Division requested additional documentation from all subcontractors: asset verification, risk evaluation, funding integrity. The trust freeze prevented asset validation. The contract entered provisional suspension. I received confirmation of that status change the same morning my father arrived at my apartment without notice. He looked older, not fragile, exposed. "You've destabilized a national security contract," he said. "I corrected unauthorized leverage." "You think this is clean?" he asked. "You think systems are clean?" "They're documented." He paced once across my living room. "You could have benefited from this," he said, "when it matured." "It wasn't yours to mature." "You were unconscious," he snapped, "and you were opportunistic." He stopped. Laura was not with him. Kyle was not with him. For the first time, he stood alone. "Do you have any idea what Hudson is facing?" he asked. Yes. General Mark Hudson was scheduled to testify before a strategic oversight panel regarding modernization vulnerabilities. Elena Voss's simulation logs had been preserved. The data did not support his doctrine, and now the funding structure supporting his most visible contract was under federal review. "You've aligned yourself against powerful people," my father said quietly. "No," I replied. "You did." He stared at me for a long moment. "I did what was necessary," he said. "For whom?" He did not answer. 2 weeks later, the oversight panel publicly questioned strategic over-reliance on outdated force projection models. Elena Voss was quietly reassigned to lead modernization simulation architecture. General Hudson announced early retirement, citing health considerations. Thomas Reed Enterprises' contract was formally voided pending restructuring. The trust assets were restored to full beneficiary control. No dramatic collapse, no public spectacle, just documentation. Laura did not call. Kyle did not contact me. My father sent one final email. "You've made your point." I did not respond. Halstead transferred management authority to me formally 3 days later. The valuation was larger than I had imagined. Mineral rights, surface property, accumulated dividends. My mother had built something in silence. I would manage it in silence. I did not celebrate. I did not announce. I paid the hospital bill in full. Then I established an independent holding structure under my name alone. No shared addresses, no redirected correspondence. Control returns quietly. Elena Voss's algorithm now anchors a modernization initiative, reshaping strategic doctrine. My mother's land remains intact. My father's company is restructuring under external oversight. I wake each morning without waiting for permission. Do you think power shifts loudly, or does it simply move to where it is respected? If you've followed Megan this far, tell me, would you have acted sooner? And if you want to continue walking beside her, stay. The review concluded without spectacle. No headlines, no scandal panels, no reporters at my door, just paperwork. Federal language is precise when it wants to be. Procedural irregularities, collateral misrepresentation, doctrinal reassessment. General Mark Hudson retired within 30 days of the oversight session. The announcement cited health and long service. It did not mention Elena Voss. It did not mention the simulation logs that had rewritten 10 years of assumptions. But inside the department, assumptions had shifted. Elena's algorithm became the foundation for a modernization directive. Adaptive modeling replaced rigid force projection. Intelligence metrics began outweighing brute escalation. She did not give interviews. She did not appear in public briefings. Her name surfaced only in technical memoranda. Quiet power. I respected that. Thomas Reed Enterprises did not collapse. It contracted. Investors withdrew. Bonding capacity was reevaluated. 2 satellite offices closed. The board requested temporary outside management. My father was asked to step back during restructuring. He did not call it removal. He called it strategic recalibration. Laura stopped hosting dinners. Kyle transferred departments. The house remained intact. From the outside, nothing appeared different, but pressure leaves hairline fractures, and once seen, they cannot be unseen. Halstead finalized the restoration of my trust control in stages. I met with their senior advisor in person, Margaret Hale. Silver hair, no wasted words. "You were not meant to find it this way," she said. "How was I meant to find it?" "Through disclosure." I held her gaze. "My grandfather anticipated resistance," she continued. "That is why the trust was structured with conditional release." "He anticipated my father." She did not contradict me. The property reports were detailed. 2 parcels in western Colorado, mineral rights with active evaluation potential, surface rights tied to grazing leases. The accumulated dividends had been reinvested automatically for a decade. Compounded silence. I asked for independent environmental review before any extraction discussion. Margaret nodded once. "You think long-term," she observed. I think in layers. She smiled slightly. Good. I did not liquidate anything. I did not sell. I established an independent management firm under my name alone. No family board seats, no shared oversight, no emergency contact redirections. When the hospital sent the final balance statement, I wired payment without ceremony. The administrator called personally. Most people request a payment plan, she said carefully. I prefer closure. My father emailed 2 weeks later. Subject, we should talk. The body of the message contained 3 lines. You've made your point. This didn't need to escalate. Call me. I did not call. 3 days later, another message arrived. Hudson is under review because of this. Do you understand what that means? Yes. It meant the system corrected itself. Quietly. Elena Voss's algorithm continued deployment testing under restricted classification. Internal memoranda described her as architect of adaptive transition. She did not request recognition. She requested access. The last public appearance of General Hudson was a retirement luncheon photograph, smiling, controlled. Power rarely admits obsolescence. It simply reframes it. One evening, nearly a month after the audit closed, my father came to my office. Not my apartment. My office. He stood just inside the doorway looking at the minimal furniture, the glass walls, the absence of inherited objects. You built this quickly, he said. I prepared. He nodded slowly. You always did. There was no accusation in his voice this time, only assessment. You could have come to me, he repeated. I did. He exhaled. Laura believed you were unstable after the accident. And you? He did not answer immediately. I believed you were emotional, he said finally. I was. And now? I am informed. He absorbed that. The board thinks I mishandled oversight, he said. You did. That contract would have secured the company for another decade. On leverage, that wasn't yours. Silence stretched between us. I thought you would never find out, he admitted. I did not react. That trust, your mother insisted on it, he continued. She didn't trust business volatility. She trusted documentation. Yes. The admission did not soften anything. I didn't refuse your hospital bill because of money, he said suddenly. Then why? You needed to stop leaning. I wasn't leaning. You always came back here, he said. I understood then. Control had always required proximity. You needed me reachable, I said quietly. Yes. The word settled heavily. And now? He looked around the office again. I don't know where you are anymore. That's the point. He stood there longer than he intended to. I didn't think you would choose systems over family, he said. I didn't choose. You did. He left without shaking my hand. I watched him walk down the hallway, shoulders squared, spine rigid. He would not collapse. He would recalibrate. Laura never contacted me again. Kyle sent a single message. I didn't know about the trust. I believed him. But belief does not restore structure. Months passed. The Colorado parcels were evaluated under new environmental modeling standards, ironically influenced by adaptive algorithms not unlike Elena's. Extraction potential existed. So did preservation value. I chose phased leasing under strict oversight. Sustainable. Measured. Nothing rushed. Elena Voss was promoted to Strategic Modernization Lead within 18 months. Her name appeared in a Defense Symposium white paper. No photograph, no biography, just a signature, E. Voss. I recognized the pattern. Quiet competence destabilizes louder confidence. My life did not transform overnight. There were no celebrations, no champagne, only routines, morning reports, investment reviews, compliance audits. Structure is a form of distance. 1 year after the hospital, I visited my mother's grave alone. No flowers from Laura, no fresh wreath from my father. I placed a simple marker stone near the base. Evelyn Carter Reed, deliberate. I stood there longer than I expected, not grieving, acknowledging. I had not avenged anything. I had corrected ownership. There is a difference. My father's company now operates under shared oversight. He retains a consultant role. His authority is diluted. He will not call it that. He will call it partnership. I continue my work. The trust remains intact. The land remains in my name. The hospital bill remains paid. When I wake now, I do not check for messages first. I check the calendar. Control is not loud, it is consistent. Tell me something. Do you think people change when they lose leverage, or do they simply reveal what was underneath? And if you were Megan, would you have kept distance or allowed reconciliation? If you'd like to continue exploring what control truly costs, stay with me.